Working with Joltron is great, but even talking about it, I'm like... Ended up on the board after being elected by some people that thought that I would be a good fit for the community to make some changes. Silly people. Controversial. No, I'm kidding. My name's Bree. I've been piercing for 15 years and I work at Opal Heart Piercing in Perth for the last 13 years. Currently on the AUPP Board of Directors and AUPP member. So working with Joltron is great, but obviously sometimes a little chaotic.
You think like, what is it, Egyptian sheets? And you're like, that doesn't sound like it would be that good. And then you buy them and you're like, fuck. It's like you're literally slipping into bed.
Keeps me on my toes always. Ended up on the board after being elected by some people that thought that I would be a good fit for the community to make some changes. So, funnily enough, I'm actually quite needle phobic. I started being super interested in body piercing when I was a young teenager. My first piercing was a lip piercing, and it very much progressed from there. So I used to drive myself to a piercing store. I would get my piercing done, and then I would sit in my car on my own for quite some time until I was well enough to drive home. Still scared to get piercings from this day. And I thought it would go away, but it didn't. And I just think it's amazing that we can take control of our own bodies and make that decision and, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway, as they say. So when someone walks in, obviously they're greeted and welcomed because a lot of piercing studios aren't so welcoming, especially ones that I experience. So it's really important that everyone feels like they're in a safe space. You know, walking them through jewelry selections and, you know, making sure that we're catering to everyone's tastes and budgets, and then creating a safe space in the piercing room as well. So I use a combination of different techniques depending on what I'm doing. Some things I'll use forceps for. Sometimes I won't use any tools at all. Sometimes I'll use, you know, blanks made into buckets, things like that. I think that piercers should use whatever tool they're comfortable with, and I don't think that using a specific tool or not makes you a good piercer. Determining the best placement would be dependent on not just their preference, but working with someone, making sure that it's going to suit their anatomy so that it heals as well as it can. Just making sure I'm, you know, not cross-contaminating anything, doing a full sterile technique, making sure people are feeling comfortable as well is really important. Well, there's been a lot of different aftercare techniques over the last 15 years, and I think keeping it simple is probably the best approach. We recommend NeilMed in our studio because it's so easy to use, and clients can't really mess that up, which they like to try and do. So, and the fact that it stays sterile, so easy, and you can spray it in any direction. So, trends that are hot right now would definitely be the angel fangs, which is a little bit tricky because they are kind of hard to heal and not everyone's anatomy is suited for that piercing. Trends I wish would die would definitely be snake eyes, for sure. Usually working, a lot of people will have, you know, inspiration photos that they'll see on Instagram, or another one of my favorites is having them pick one certain design and then basing the rest of those once I have that sort of theme to kind of roll and create something based off that. I would just be guiding them through it as best as I can, and the only real positive for me being such a needle phobe myself is that I am very empathetic and I will always understand and relate to that. So it's bad for me, but it's good for my clients because I can relate and guide them through it. There's a lot of stories and moments that have stood out just when, you know, people have wanted something for several years. and they finally get it, and you just see their eyes light up and they're so happy and they can't stop looking in the mirror. You know, first earlobe piercings for children, first earlobe piercings for elderly women that weren't able to get them done prior. Finally being able to make a decision for their body. You know, sometimes that happens in 50s and 60s, and it's really special. The piercing industry has changed so much, but for the better. When I started, there wasn't accessibility to, you know, good, or not as much accessibility to even good studios in Australia. There was such a small handful to even work in. I ended up moving from Queensland over to Perth just to try and get into a high-end body piercing studio, because at that point, if I didn't get there or somewhere, I wasn't going to be a piercer if I couldn't do it properly. So I think it's changed. I think clients have so much more knowledge now as well, which can be a blessing and a curse. But mostly, yeah, it's come a long way, and I'm excited to see how much further it can come. Right now, especially in Australia, the community is bigger than it's ever been. When I started piercing, there was no community. There was quite a lot of rivalry, if you ask me. And that's what I love seeing evolve as well, is everyone coming together with the same things in mind. Everyone hated each other when I started piercing. There was only like 4 or 5 shops that were good enough to consider working in, and now there's like... I am a really big fan of nostril piercings. A lot of piercers are sick of them and are like, not another nostril. I just think they're great. I think they suit everyone. I think they look beautiful. And conchas, obviously, are always a crowd favourite. Am I answering my least favourite? Ooh, least favourite piercing would, I think it depends on the client, but I am not a huge fan of smiley piercings because I think that they are a bit risky and can cause gum and teeth damage. Ooh. People can find me on Instagram at Miss Modify, and appointments can be booked through the Opal Heart booking website. Amazing. Was that okay? I haven't done one before, so I was a bit worried.